Hello, friends, and welcome back to r/ProRevenge. Let's start our video with the story of the conflict between the OP and his greedy mother. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. Thanks, Mom. My mother's a bad person. She defines the term gold digger. She got child support from my dad for 4 kids for a grand total of 14 years and half of his 401k. I was the youngest kid and got to experience the end of her first and second marriage and all of its wonders. The second husband made $100K a year while she did temp jobs throughout their 10-year marriage and spent every dime of the child support from my dad on herself and bills that she had to take care of. She expected my older brother and sister to pay her back for college tuition, even though my stepdad paid for them both and all her personal bills. I turned 16 and get my license. I'm allowed to use one of her 3 cars since she can't afford to get one for me. A year goes by and the car's transmission, Acura, goes out, so she promises me that she'll give me half of whatever I can sell the car for in order to buy myself one. Thinking I'll barely make $1,500, I end up selling the car for $3,500, so I expect her to pay at least $1,500. Doesn't happen. My dad tells me that I can decide how I want to plan things out. We tell her that there's a car for $1,200 being sold where he lives, and that if she pays for it, he'll pay for maintenance. She can't bear to part with that much and says she'll do $1,000, so we agree and she gives my dad the money and we part ways. My dad turns around and hands me the cash, saying he already paid for the car, which he got for $800, and I can keep the money and the car. It was well spent on school since she refuses to help pay for college, even though I have a job, pay my own bills, and live on my own with serious health problems. Even though it was only $1,000, it was the best money I ever spent. And our second story. Ignoring the developer? Sure money. I was at the beginning of my career as a developer intern at a local IT company. I was still attending university classes. The agreement was that I'd be working 6 hours a week. We were creating a web application with a central user management system, important later. You could use the same credentials for the different modules. This meant a metric ton of users created for testing, and it was the same data set as the client's demo accounts with live email addresses. The company hired 4 other interns like me, 1 senior developer and 1 part-time developer, no architect, nobody to design the architecture. The project was not on a tight budget, yet they wanted to save money on everything. They wanted to use the internal framework that was supposed to make things easier. It made our lives a nightmare. But the order was to use that. We had no say in it. We tried to warn the boss that this whole project's going to be a nightmare, but he simply ignored us at those rare times when he was at the office. We've been missing deadlines every time. Nothing was working properly. The system was slow. A logical response from the company was to make us do overtime. We were working 10 hours a day while studying for classes, preparing for end-of-term exams. The remaining time we were trying to socialize, family, girlfriend, etc. It soon turned out that we would need to put much more effort into the project than the company intended to. The framework had tons of bugs, every release was a nightmare, 12-hour workdays became regular. One of the interns worked 270 hours in a month. We were paid by the hour, at least we were compensated in a way. The test user database has been used by the client for demo purposes. It had their live email addresses with proper group memberships. Every action made in the app sent an email to a group that was eventually sent out to the client as well. They could just simply ignore that. That was around 10 emails a day. After a year, I was at the end of my university years, and it slipped out of my mouth that I don't feel inclined to support this big pile of bug. The boss asked me to come to his office. He told me that they were not satisfied with my performance, and they won't offer me a full-time position after I graduated. This was the point where I snapped. They gave me an option to either get my crap together or leave. I've noticed that the email service was not working on the test environment, yet it was scheduled. This means that the email has been put in the queue but not delivered. I've mentioned this to the senior developer. He ignored me like I was the idiot who's not going to be there anyway. I was sitting there like I should care. I admit I even got upset about this. Then it hit me. I'll just let them do what they want. Once the service is fixed, it'll explode eventually. Once I had my degree in hand, I left the company. The other interns also got their degrees, but they were offered a full-time position. One of them left 3 weeks after me. They insisted to a probation period for him, but didn't expect him to actually leave. He did. Another guy left around 2 months after that. Here comes the best part. They fixed the email service after a month. In 1 hour, around 400,000 emails were sent to every user in the system. The mail server could handle the load, but the client had to assort these one by one. They threatened the team with contacting the CEO. The team already had a bad reputation because of the missed deadline. Somehow they managed to push the app live. The requirement said that 500 concurrent users should be properly handled by the server the client had already paid for, but it couldn't keep up with the load. The company had about 200 gigabytes of RAM. They've run out of budget way before the initial live release. The company had to pay more in terms of hardware and penalty than the original budget was. After leaving the company, I got a full-time job with a fraction of the stress and a more employee-friendly environment. And our last story. How my entitled aunt and uncle's crappy parenting came back to bite them in the behind. My aunt, Dad's older sister, has always doted on her son. I'm Indian, and in my country, son preference is a pervasive social disease. Most people, regardless of social status, religion, etc., place great value in their sons, and daughters are seen as a burden on the family. My aunt was no exception. Ever since she was a kid, she had this messed up, one-sided competition with my dad. I, a woman, am my dad's only child. This gave her an opportunity to constantly make passive-aggressive remarks that my dad was so unfortunate to have a daughter, his line would end with him, etc., etc. She and her husband spoiled their son to the point that he became a narcissistic bully. He would often mock my stutter, cheat on his girlfriends, and make unreasonable demands of his parents. But did they ever try to discipline him or say no to him? Of course not. Their prince could do no wrong. If he made fun of my stutter, I was a piece of crap who deserved it. If he cheated on his girlfriend, she must have neglected him. If he made sexist remarks about his female boss, well, he's a man. You get the picture. Years went by, and he just kept getting worse. When he was living with them, he at least pretended to respect them, but when he landed a very high-paying job and was able to move out, it was as if he forgot they even existed. He and his wife hardly ever spoke to them. By now, my uncle had retired. My aunt had never worked. They had very little money left as they'd spent it all on their son. They'd paid for his education, his vacations, his wedding. Now they barely had enough to put food on the table. My dad would help them as much as he could. In 2011, my cousin's wife became pregnant, and during her third trimester, my cousin asked his parents to move in with him and his wife. We all knew it was because they wanted free caretakers for the baby, but my aunt just couldn't shut up about how wonderful her son was for wanting to take care of his parents. By now, I was well established in my field and was looking forward to a successful career. She taunted my father one last time, saying my education and career would be of no use as I was just a daughter and could never take care of him the way her son would take care of her. My dad just smiled and wished her well. She and her husband moved to my cousins, who lived in another city's place. My dad would often receive calls and texts from her bragging about what a great life they had. She sounded a bit too chipper. My dad began to suspect that all wasn't right. About 6 months after they'd left, my dad said he was going to visit them as he was getting worried about his sister. He asked me and my stepmom to accompany him. We reluctantly agreed. We arrived at their place, and it's truly stunning. A luxurious home in a posh locality. There was no surprise as my cousin is very successful. What did shock us was the way he was treating his parents. They were practically servants in his house. My aunt tended to the baby, cooked and cleaned. My uncle tended to the gardens, took care of the cars, and went grocery shopping, etc. My cousin could easily afford maids, drivers, etc. But why would he when his parents were now his free slaves? What was even worse was the way he treated them. My cousin-in-law would often yell at my aunt and would just order her around. My uncle had this vacant and defeated look in his eyes. I'd never liked him, but couldn't help but feel a tinge of pity. My dad took my aunt aside and told her she didn't have to live like this, that he could make arrangements for her and her husband. My aunt put on a fake smile and said, "Nonsense, we couldn't be happier." Anytime my cousin or his wife said something cruel to her or told her to shut up when she tried to make conversation, my aunt would put on a smile and act as though it was just the sweetest thing anyone had ever said to her. It would have been funny if it had not been so pitiful. Memories of all the horrible things she'd said and done to me and my dad were still fresh in my mind, and the schadenfreude was for real. My aunt's fake, rueful smiles and the way she tried to cover up how her son was really treating her is the cringiest thing I've ever seen. My aunt and uncle often stressed the importance of having a male heir. They claimed that their son would be their provider, while I, a daughter, would be a burden till the day I was married off. Surprise, surprise, the exact opposite has happened. While they were basically slaves in their son's house, I'm unmarried, have a loving partner, wonderful pets and friends, and a great career. My dad has his own restaurant and seems very happy with his work. Entitled parents often assume that their kid can be an a-hole to everyone else, but he would never do that to them. Boy, are they in for a shock. Edit. My cousin hasn't completely escaped karma either. A few months ago, he got fired from his job, and his boss at his new place of employment is his ex-girlfriend, whom he cheated on and dumped. All because he didn't like the fact that she was more successful than him. I'm sure working under his ex is eating my cousin alive. I think the only reason they refuse to get out of the hellhole is because she refuses to admit that she's wrong. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.